Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode. Hopefully my voice is loud and clear and people can hear the bird songs in the background. I wanted to speak about two questions that arose to me, and I decided to make in one episode. The first question is, can the weight of all ideology, all ideas be carried internally? That is the title of the episode, but in the subtitle, if people pay attention, I have written, how are you moving in your inner realms? And so the inspiration is really, I was thinking, can all ideas in some sense be piloted through behind one's eyes? I need to find a gentler song, guys, hang on. Okay, the song's going to load. While it's loading, I'll say this, that I personally believe that in the outer realms, when we look at an object, it has mass, and that mass, especially as gravity acts upon it, becomes the weight of the object. If we were to think about content in the inner realms, that means it's as if when a person, let's say somebody sees an apple, and then let's say somebody is told to visualize an apple. The person who sees the apple they don't have to actually do anything in the inner realms. The apple is right there. In the outer realms, it has a sort of weight. In the inner realms, there is no mass, but there is design. It's important I read something. There we go. You see, mass is defined, you can say, as a large body of matter with no definite shape. That's a definition. Or here's a better definition: the quantity of matter which a body contains as measured by its acceleration under a given force. That means it's the quantity of matter in the outer realms that is suggesting the weight. Behind our eyes, there is no quantity of it, but there is the image that it gives the appearance of quantity. That means it's kind of strange. It's as if imagine someone again seeing an apple in front of their eyes, someone visualizing an apple while their eyes are closed. That visualization of the apple cannot be touched, as if it can't be made. We cannot tangibly touch the apple, as if it has no quantity, but it has image. And so our minds are, in a way, design based, but in some sense, because the designs of our inner realms are not physical, they don't have mass. So what that means is a person can visualize an apple hovering in the air, but if you throw an apple in the air, it falls down. So the inner realms, it doesn't have a sort of, it's kind of strange, you know, it's like it's not a weight, but it's like the intensity of how long the attention is on an idea. to continue, we have access to a world in front of our eyes. There is geometry. There's the design of objects in front of our eyes. There is the mass, the material in some sense of the object. There is color. And there is dimensions, right? That's something we notice about just phenomenology. Right now, this coffee cup in front of me, it's made of a certain material, it has a certain design, it has a certain color, and in accordance to my perception from my eyes, it appears to me in a sort of space and dimension. But if I was to think about now, again, to go back to the idea of like if I was to visualize a coffee cup hovering in the air, that coffee cup hovering in my inner realm, so that means a visualization of an object, if our eyes were closed, it has design, it has color, it has dimension. The only thing it doesn't have is its mass. It doesn't have, it's not, in some sense, the material cannot be touched. So its designs are accessing a world that has way more freedom than the outer realms, than in what's in front of our eyes, yet it cannot touch it. So it's so fascinating. It's as if like, if we want to touch an object, we use our hands. If we are to touch an idea, we have to be the witness within. We are consciousness. We're literally the positioning of attention in the world. In the chat section, there's a question. Lorna says, you know those days you feel really light? What is that about? I played sports my whole life and there were days things are just spot on and effortless. Had to get that all the time. So your question morphed into another question midway. Lorna says, I never tried to get it, but it was there. Felt and flow with everything. Everything though was faster, my hits were farther. Yeah, so here's the thing, Lorna. There could be many factors why a person feels light throughout the day, you know, or feels things are going smoothly. Some of those factors have to do to your outer realms and have to do with your inner realms. If you were talking to an astrologer would be like, don't forget the planets, you know, their alignment. But I would tell you that really what it is it is selflessness. You know how they say when you are having fun, time flies by? Because when one is having fun, they're too directly experiencing the moment to have an opinion or an idea on it. It is pure selflessness. So those days that are karmically smooth, the person is pure selfless, yet they are functioning, they are carrying their responsibility of existing as a creature in the world. Right? So just because a person gets, let's say, insight, it doesn't mean that who they are has to immediately or to change, you know? It's like, I still live like a human being, even though I have noticed that the mind is an awareness to the human more than being the human. I've experienced moments, to finish your question, that the less I do, the more happens. And moments where the more I do, hilariously, the less happens. It is your choice. You choose the soul of how animate the soul of the moment is. To go back to the topic, an immediate answer: can the weight of all ideas be carried internally? My answer personally is that no. Not all ideas are destined to be carried. Not all ideas are destined to be shared. Not all ideas can be shared. You see, that is the world we're living in. The more we get closer to the unknown, the less there is an individual to touch anything. And at the same time, we got to keep in mind we're a human being, and that we don't know if we're going to collectively activate. What that means is the era of collectivism, we're on the edge of it, like we're just igniting it. But in the future, collectivity could provide intelligence in the same way. In the same way technologies have become an inseparable part of our life, like everybody has a phone, collective living could become similar to that. Right now, we're all individually living, but in the future, if we were collectively living, that means our minds are shared, or they have access to the same inner space. If that is the case, then the weight of ideology is no longer on the shoulder of one human being. That means that right now, we have the privilege of the content of our mind being specific to us. Every person has a personalized dimension and an impersonal dimension, personal and impersonal. The personal dimension is private still. Right now, for example, I'm sharing from my personal dimension to the outer realms. This personal dimension, it has a sort of, it's like we're an instrument that requires to be played in a certain way at this point in history. But that personal dimension in the future can become collectivized, which means the privacy of our imagination kind of goes away. But this is way in the future, just not now. And we got to keep in mind that life is all about information and how information moves. There is nothing greater that can be said to a secular audience. When I give these talks in my inner realms, I'm talking to the species. I really don't care who hears it, but I know that human beings each have their own preference. They each have their sort of, I called it a principle universal philosophy. Just like the planet has an axis, and there is the equator, and the degree of the equator is important for life to be on Earth, I feel every person has an axis. And this axis is really the impersonal and personal, and the relationship they have with each other. There are moments, for example, the more people there are right now, I'm giving this podcast alone, like on my balcony. But if I was talking in a room of one person, let's say there was somebody else other than me, then it would be a different thing. If that person was in front of me and I could kind of tell, it's as if you know what it is, it's as if there's one mind in the room. When there is one mind in the room, it's so easy for reality to be absolute. When there is another mind, when there's more than one mind, let's say two minds in the room, the message of the personal dimensions, how they're shared with the impersonal, they change. Believe me, this is something that it's like there's evidence of it all the time. It's as if somebody is saying something and then another person enters the room and they can't say it easily. In the Islamic world, at least in regards to how much I've experienced Iran when I was young, I will tell you, they have this concept they say that something is mahramane, right? And what that means is, of course, Iran is a theocracy. There's Islamic law both in the culture and the politics. But the idea meant that it's like the concept means that which is okay to see. You know, I think this is only happening in countries where there is religion, where there is a sort of hijab, right? And people think hijab is just for women. They think only women are wearing scarves, you know, around their hair, and that's it. Only women are suffering, you know. But there is a hijab of behavior and attitude to reality. You know, that means in a theocratical society, it's like men cannot see the women of another man, like whose hair is uncovered. You know what I mean? So there is a sort of internal, I don't want to say politics, but an internal structure, right? In theocratical societies where it's as if the person is wearing a religious uniform before they can be a free personality, right? That religious uniform is not just physical, it is attitude. It's how the psychology is open to the world. And we must not forget, as Oscar Wilde said, you know, every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. You know, in the outer realms, let's say there's something big, a big object we want to carry. The person can literally call for help, be like, hey man, can you help me carry this? You know, somebody helps carry this object. Let's say it's a big object. People come and help. But in the inner realms, if somebody finds something, a psychological state where there's weight, in the outer realms, people can help you. In the inner realms, technically nothing can help you. You know, this is why there is even psychologists on the planet, human beings who care to enter the inner realms of other people and assist them. In the inner realm, it is literally the free will's job. Everybody has to train their free will. The free will cannot be trained if it doesn't listen to something. And what that means is, it's kind of like, imagine a person going to the doctor and the doctor seeing, like, you know, the person is sick and the doctor's like, all right, this is the actual prescription. And the person's like, no, I don't trust this doctor, you know. Or the doctor says, you got to do this is the science behind it, and the person's like, no, you know, I need to see another doctor, you know, this doctor, I don't like his tone, you know. So what I mean is that you won't go to a doctor and tell the doctor he's wrong, because the person needs information and so has to trust where the information is coming from. Similarly, it's like you can't, when it comes to the mind and the inner realms and how the psychology of the human being develops in this realm, I would say it's the same, right? Where discipline, whether it's like, just think about it, back in the day, you know, of course there was a dimension to metaphysics that's completely being ignored now. And that dimension was that there were invisible others, you know, even there was this person who wrote this book called Invisible Helpers. The mind, imagine like somebody telling you do push-ups, do 10 push-ups. Now imagine somebody like closing their eyes and feeling like an extraterrestrial is telling them to do 10 push-ups, you know. You know, that means discipline has been doing the same thing as the invisible other. We have, in some sense, the human psyche, if it was here to only learn from itself, you wouldn't have an outer realms. You know, because I know that when the brains, like when we sleep, just take this in. when a person sleeps, everything kind of shuts down, and for a moment, right, there is nothing, and then you appear in a dream. And in the dream you have a body, and let's say you can move in the dream, there's a body, there's a world. It's as if your eyes are closed, you're sleeping in the bed, but your mind in your inner realms is simulating bodyhood and worldhood. And if the purpose of life was only a personal dimension, there would be no need to know that you're a physical entity. You know, we live in a world where it's a bit scary in the sense that because there is so many unknown variables, the moment a human being in a system of knowledge wants to develop or update, they have to meet the unknown. You know, this is called the hero's journey, shared by Joseph Campbell. You know, let me share this with the audience. It's a diagram noteworthy. So if the listeners can look at the wallpaper of the video, I am sharing a picture as soon as I can find it. So Joseph Campbell realized that in storytelling there is a character in a world. And this character goes through a transformation. And if somebody was to give a simple answer to the meaning of life, it's like, go watch the Transformer movie, you know, as if like the whole point is we transform. We are not the same as we began. And that's how we even know a day was, there was achievement in the day, that we made progress in the day, when before we sleep at night, we don't feel the same as we did the day before, you know. You know, whether you see this for a lifetime, a hero's journey in a lifetime, or just see it on a daily basis or momentary, this is the thing. So first, we have in any sort of storytelling, this is very important, and you know, Persians are known to be good storytellers, so I need to share this. In a lot of stories, we are given character introduction, right? So think as if life was a movie. It would be as if you're introduced to the character. You're a human being living in a world, you know, wherever in the world you are. Then something happens, and from a known state, an unknown event happens. Usually what it is in, I would say, modern stories is that the main character loses something that is important to him. And that's the point where everybody in the audience begins emotionally connecting to the character, right? Human beings, like the human being pretty much is a give and take animal. You know, when things are taken away from the human being, we empathize. When things are given to the human being, we empathize. Like, you know, in a lot of action movies, you see the hero get a next level weapon and everybody's like, oh my God, you know, it's about to go down, you know. So this hero's journey starts from the known, goes to the unknown. The hero gets to his challenge, he fails. Usually the hero fails, and then a mentor arises. That means it's as if you're looking at a perfect individual, then something imperfect happens, so a problem comes. Then our main character in the story goes to solve the problem. He can't. He fails. He experiences the first wave of failure. Then we as the audience are like, oh, this main character has a big problem. You know, then the mentor comes. The mentor, in some sense, essence, it teaches the main character, but the main character, what happens in many stories, the main character fails to achieve the ultimate teaching, and then at the end of the show, when he's fighting the bad guy, he does the ultimate move, the main character. Right? And so in his transformation, there comes a moment, whether it's Kung Fu Panda, whether it's Dragon Ball Z, whether it's, Wei Wuxian in like the epic Chinese soap opera, whether it's the Untamed. So what it is, the main character attains a level, so people are like, yo, this guy went through hardship and he overcame, nice, I like this character, then the character reaches the complete breaking point. And if you look at this Joseph Campbell's, the hero's journey, it comes to a point where abyss, death, and rebirth. Now Carl Jung, for the human psychology, for if the human, we were looking at the human story, Carl Jung is like every human being at some point in their life, they will come to confront their shadow. That means there's one model where people are like, yo, I'm good from the beginning, I'm an angel, and they just live in the world thinking they're good all the time. Or then there's a mentality where the person's like, okay, no, I'm good in certain moments, bad in certain moments. What is the relationship of this, and where is this leading? And our karma is character development, for the gods, And then from the rebirth of the character, from the failure of the past sense of self, the person comes to the neutrality of the present, and through the new force of their vision, they in some sense become the future self. So when the character transforms, the whole audience gets emotional, because we saw not just the overcoming of hardship, but we saw the absolutist solution to hardship. Our main character becomes victorious. He defeats the bad guys, and at the end returns to his village where, his love interest is waiting, This model is very complex, and once implemented on human psychology, it's really what's going on. From a known state, we go to an unknown state. From an unknown state, all that we can do is come to a known state. It's this, imagine like this hilarious cycle of metaphysics going on in the universe, where human beings become gods and gods become human beings. And somebody's like, universe, why are you doing this? And both the human beings and gods for a moment stopped, and eternity had no face. Sometimes in life, our personal dimensions they can possess the impersonal. For example, Hitler was a human being where his inner realms wanted to pretty much be a god among all the other stories the world could tell itself. And what's hilarious? The hero is a concept only from one side of the coin. There's this story, this imperial warrior, undefeated in battle, in his last battle, kills an opponent, the opponent dies, and this undefeated juggernaut of a warrior is like, yo, where are these people I'm defeating in battle going? He wonders about heaven and hell. He eventually finds himself at, tells someone to find a wise sage, and somebody tells him where the sage is, and he finds himself at the top of the mountain at this monastery, and he just marches, barges inside, And he doesn't care what the sage is doing or the disciples are doing, and he just shouts at this sage, this imperial warrior, and he says, "Sage, tell me now, what is heaven and hell?" Intense, as if it's a command, don't hesitate, or there's consequence. And so the sage is in the middle of a Zen tea ceremony, and the sage is like, he takes a sip from his tea, very calm, very undisturbed. And he looks at this warrior who says, "What is heaven and hell?" And he pauses and he says, "You are too much of an animal. You're too violent and stupid like an animal for me to tell you the truth of higher dimensions." Something like that, he says. In actuality, in the story, he calls the imperial warrior a goon, G-O-O-N. And so this warrior, imperial warrior, is the undefeated, an ego that is untouched, unrivaled. He just looks at the sage and not a single word. He takes his sword and about to execute the sage, as if, "How dare you dishonor the undefeated?" And in that moment, the sage just drinks a cup, a sip from his tea, or homemade coffee with too much sugar. He takes a sip from his tea, and right before the blade of this warrior, this undefeated warrior, just kills him, hits him, he looks at him and he says, "This is the door to hell." And he just smiles. And there is something inside this imperial warrior where it's as if this gravity is like, "I will fulfill the execution," but it's as if conscience, a force beyond the intellect, kind of holds his hand. And for a moment, he can't kill the sage until he has understood what he has said. And the moment he understands what the sage says, as if that's rage is the door to hell, he drops his sword. He was about to kill the sage in a moment, then suddenly he drops his sword and he bows. Why? Because he understood heaven and hell are states of mind. They are not locations. They are maybe a location to a creature or a personality in a singular dimension. But the moment you become multidimensional, your eyes are your universe. And to the secular, what greater truth can you expect to find here? In the void. The moment the imperial warrior bows, the undefeated ego bows to the wisdom of the moment. The sage says, "This is the door to heaven." That means it's not just your physicality got somewhere, it's in some sense a deeper idea where a man attained the state of unconditional being regardless of what he does. That is the, inner heaven that awaits. The brain is literally just storytelling existence. In the search for the storyteller, as the word metaphysics suggests, it's something that comes after the physics. That means if we are a character in a physical story, in a physical realm, beyond the character and the world and every relationship of the character to the world and the world to the character, intelligence stands. I feel there are some ideas that are heavy. We have to bring in ageism, and we have to reevaluate all archetypes in modern society, not through fascist discrimination, but through, for the first time, a compassionate outlook, you know? You know, when I was younger, I remember there was a video game I saw. I think I was at the age of 10. Both me and my twin brother were at the age of 10. We saw this video game on a computer, and it was this really messed up, gory video game. This is like, you know, now all video games have become animated and fluffy, you know, not all video games, but like, you know, the early video games, the creators had no ethical limits. And I remember me and my brother both see this messed up video game, do you know? And we are both shocked. It was as if some imagery that we did not have a place to position in our mind. And guys, there's more to the story, but really what it was a moment of intensity. It was as if who I was in the past could not carry the sight of who I am today. That's what I'm trying to say. The more I have recognized there is some sort of moving intelligence on the surface of this planet, and we are being it, the more questions find the person than answers. An answer is a photograph. That means anybody who is playing the belief-disbelief game, it's as if there's a photograph in the hand of the hand of the theist, and the atheist is like, give me that photograph. You know, it's like your hands are free, and it's literally this fight of trying to literally where every person is holding a corner of the world and they are pulling it as if it's their own. And there are ideas that their weight cannot be carried. Dehumanized states of consciousness. Right now, we don't have, I mean, hopefully we will in the future have a reform in the educational system, and the educational system transforms from students and teachers into every human being is an explorer of humanity. Just go forth, you know, like that. That would be the educational system. The greatest retaliation of human intelligence to the probabilities of extinction. It's as if they say the human being, what are human beings known for? We don't give up without a fight, right? That theme is very in human nature for the surviving animal. So it's the same for the human mind, where before, you know, the person gives up, it's as if the mind is doing its final dance, do you know? Before our eyes close, our eyes must serve the realm. And I don't know who's listening, you know, and you may be someone who's concluded life is about just exploration of the free will. I'll tell you, at some point, one will snap out of their personal dimensions and they will notice the impersonal, and for the first time they will see how giant the world is and how small, you know, we are in it. Literally, I'm a person like talking when there's giant, you know, galactic level of events happening. Suns are dying, you know. You know, that is the most dramatic universe, you know. Suns enter the world, their light leads to civilizations, and then the sun dies. We're like, oh my God. You know, that means if an ancient Egyptian was alive now, an ancient Egyptian would probably be incredibly sad. You know, imagine a time traveler brought an ancient Egyptian who worshipped the sun to 2021 and was like, hey man, our science has realized, you know, astronomy has realized that what do you call it, that stars die and the god you were worshiping will one day die. And the ancient Egyptians like, I don't want to believe it, you know, Ra is Ra, you know. It's like God, it's like the sun is a god, it's an eternal God, don't change my truth, the ancient Egyptian will shout, right? But the time traveler will be like, hey man, you know, you're lucky, I'm just showing you 2021. And you know why, guys, I have a theory. If time travelers, like, we reach that point, I personally feel time travel is impossible, but I speak about it as if it is, you know, with the hope that it may be, and hopefully I'm wrong. But imagine if there's time travelers will literally be the smoothest people on the planet, you know. They will be people who never make mistakes, because if they do, they go back in time and fix it. They will be perfected beings in a strange way. It's like the time traveler noticed, like, there was a family photo, you know, and there was a, you know, mustard stain on his shirt, and he goes back in time and literally, like, it's like, you know, this man never has a stain on his shirt, this time traveler, you know. I'm being playful and abstract, of course. But non-ideas can be held. I feel there's some ideas and some philosophies that even my eyes are not destined for, and human beings will open their eyes in the future. Children will be born who they are in some sense meant to go towards those dimensions, right? That's the cool thing about starting to live a multidimensional life and being true to the dimensions that you perceive, and also recognizing that if the universe is being considered intelligent, we can't just treat it through the logic of an object. That means it's like, if I look at an object, you know, the logic is very simple. That object is just there. That object's not just going to jump in the air. You know, the logic of the moment is simply that the form is there. You know, it's like a photograph. But when we look at a human being, we can't really treat the human being like an object, because something within the object, even though physically we're all objects to each other, but I'm saying we cannot treat the human being only as an object, because something within, you know, all the atoms that constitute that person are moving them, right? Anything that shows sign of conscious life, whether technology or biology, must be honored. Do you know? That means if it was me, I mean, we haven't reached that point, but if we could immediately find a replacement for meat, I would instantly advocate that, you know, because conscious life is a rarity. It's as if the more consciousness there is in the room, the more karmic, animate divinity, you know, the credit of that sector in space and time has, you know. And time is not moving the same in different for different, you can say, different moments of the space-time continuum. Time is self-simulated differently in accordance to the self being different. We look at inferior species, none of them wear a watch. I have yet to see, you know, a kangaroo wear boxing gloves. You know, or an eagle, you know, wearing a watch. Or a bear. Can you imagine a bear wearing a watch and, like, shoes, that shit, you know, and just standing on its two legs? At that point, the person's like, I have no idea how to engage wildlife anymore. I personally feel the inferior species, they haven't awakened. I will call them the sleeping. You know, the sleeping. There are so many species that are still asleep. They have no idea of the complexity that the human being perceives. And so many people on YouTube, they're like, I want to be a mentor. You know, I'm a mentor. It's as if, like, the only thing left to mentor is the natural world. When there's the concept of growth, There is no such thing as mentorship. For a long time, I wondered what Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching meant when he said, after the leader's task is done, the people will say we did it ourselves. As if the highest form of advancement is one where the person is the personal dimensions feel liberated, right? And in order for the personal dimensions to feel liberated, the person's mind has to move. This means that the best way to help the world, believe it or not, Christ kind of suggested it, that to be in the world and not of it. That means right now I exist as a biological human being, also as an ideological creature. Of course, the mind changes faster than the body. That's how we know we have bodies. If one discovers an intelligent state, a state of mind where they are watching their mind, that means they have accessed something faster than the speed of their mind. And the speed of mind is light. So what is faster than light? I will tell you, stillness. Stillness is divine. Silence is also divine. And the moment we go into silence and stillness, and we are content with those dimensions of our being, then the only thing left is to be an individual. You see, that means there's some people who are individuals and they want to go become collective. There's some beings who are there's some people on this planet, they're already collective and they're being individual. Those people who are being collective before being individual, they don't fear anything and they only play in the outer realms. Those people who don't know that there's a presence within them beyond their personality, and this has to be experientially and sincerely self-inquired into. That means it's one of those responsibilities. It's as if the human being is being told to be responsible for its mind, and in order to be responsible for our intelligence, we have to understand it completely. To understand our intelligence completely, we find ourselves in a multidimensional context. In that multidimensional context, there can be no one ring to rule them all, or one idea or one world to rule them all. Even though I speak about there being an original earth, but I'm telling you, when a being realizes the mind is playing a film over the physical film, and that's how the physical film appears real, the person becomes content with the elemental. That means, believe it or not, whatever opinion we have on biology, existence doesn't care. And what I mean by that, it's as if the person could be like, I don't like protons, and the proton doesn't care. Do you know what I mean? The electron doesn't care. And we ask the neutron, do you care? And the neutron's like, I'm neutral, buddy. I don't care. You know, neutrons are agnostics. If in a pantheistic universe there was reincarnation, a neutron would definitely become a, human agnostic. There is truths in language, and there are truths of experience. The truths of experience, in some sense, allow us to experience the unknown. That means the person's training is actually the wilderness of exploration. You know, there was this show that was incredible. It showed this warrior, and this warrior actually went into nature and started training and fighting. And it's as if the person's whole exercise routine was to go and survive in nature like an animal, but as a human being, of course, but like an animal. That means to become one with the wilderness. As if like Tarzan, right? The story of Tarzan is what happens when you leave the human brain in the forest. It becomes, tries to become the top of that hierarchy. That means, guys, imagine Tarzan, right? Just like I don't know how many people know the story of Tarzan. Pretty much this kid who's like stranded on an island, and pretty much, gorillas in a very Disney way. In a very animation kind of way, the gorillas take care of Tarzan, right? This kid. And this kid is raised, he moves like a gorilla, he jumps like a gorilla, he's pretty much like the weird monkey around monkeys. But the thing is, if you were to think for a moment, imagine there was a predator, right? Imagine there was a leopard, right? And so the human brain is so much more advanced than the, let's say, gorilla brain, right? So the Tarzan would have an ability to defend the other gorillas in a way where, where the leopard even doesn't expect, right? Because the human brain can see additional dimensions. So in the middle, it's as if like to all the gorillas, Tarzan was like an alien, And eventually Tarzan is brought back into civilization. I don't really remember the ending of the film, but that should probably be the ending, right? Where a human being that has dwelled in nature like an animal is like enough time to wear a suit and advance civilization, you know what I mean? And everything has a wilderness component to it. It's all about how much we honor the unknown. It is so easy to honor something that is known. Like you read about someone great in history and you're like, yeah, that person was great, I honor them. Do you know? But when it comes to the unknown, that means it's like honoring a state of being, not honoring an image, right? Staying true to the presence of the moment, because the personality changes every day. Even though we have at different dimensions, levels of memory. We have short-term memory and long-term memory. That means when we wake up and we're like, yeah, another day, it's a new day. That new day is actually in reference to the last day. And it's honestly like teleportation, guys. I don't know how we haven't noticed this as a species, but when we fall asleep and when we wake up from deep sleep, we don't have a sense of time. So literally teleportation is literally being an instant travel where there is no sense of time. No teleporter has been late ever. That's a quote where I think I should probably like put it on a t-shirt, teleporters are never late. And the mind is free teleportation. The person is like, did I sign up for an intelligent that has access to various moments of life, even though one has passed through those moments and they pretty much don't exist anymore other than our memories? Our memory is literally our connection to divinity, our intelligence, our awareness. Because in some sense, the question comes, the person's like, yo, who's asking about God? And then the answer comes, someone with an ego is asking about God. So what is moving the ego? Then the answer comes, God is moving the ego. So it's as if from one angle, God is only in the room. From another angle, human beings are only in the room. The secular models perceives human intelligence in the room first, then anything else. And the religious view perceives the divine in the room before the non-divine or whatnot. Hafiz, this poet from 700 years ago, the Sufi mystic, he says, The great religions are the ships. Poets, the lifeboats. Every sane person I know has jumped overboard. What he means is that everything is a transportation vehicle. That means, imagine for the first time there are ideas. Ideas are being seen as vehicles, and just like how somebody opens a limo door, do you know, it's as if a podcaster talking about an ancient concept is like opening a limo. You know. And just like a vehicle, you can step out of the vehicle at any time, right? So a person could be like, I'm angry, so that they're in the vehicle of the thought of anger, right? And then the moment, you know, of course anger is an emotion too, but let's just treat it as a thought for a moment. As only a thought. And so the moment the person's not angry anymore, it's as if they close the door of the vehicle and they get out of that ideological Uber ride. And you know, we cannot fear emptiness because it has nothing, no content to fear. That means it's as if everybody's afraid of death, but when we look at it, how it's like there is no content. It's literally as if a biological opportunity, like a paintbrush in the hand of the universe. And so the human being's like, is this my life? You know, and the logos is like, yeah, it is, you know, and so the universe happens, and what takes place is eventually human expression from the inner realms begins. It's, you know what it is, just like how technology is something in the outer realms trying to get more and more in towards our inner realms. It's as if the logos is a technology in the inner realms trying more and more to appear in the outer realms. It's as if there is you know, dare I say, a dehumanized urge in the human being to be an expression of the maxed out intelligence rather than just an ideological container of the moment. You know, it's like direct experience holds secrets that language will never touch. And unless the person realizes that their mind is actually an art gallery, a museum, to me at least, my mind is sometimes like a studio, you know, like a private studio. Anytime I'm waiting, you know, at the bank, I'm waiting at the doctor's office, or anywhere, I'm waiting at the bus stop, just my mind is like that private studio. I just go in there and I solve problems for other moments in space and time. Your inner realms are your choice of how much you care for your intelligence. And so internally, of course, the brain can train itself to be able to handle any ideas. So it depends on the arms you have, the arms of the strength. It depends on the strength of your mind. If somebody in this life realizes it's literally a neutral choice where a person can choose an optimistic archetype or a pessimistic archetype. If the person chooses a pessimistic archetype, it's as if they have chosen weakness before strength. If the person chooses an optimistic archetype, they have chosen strength before weakness, right? So when you realize it's the same, it's like as easy it is to accept that one is weak, it's also as easy to accept one is strong. And it's also a whole game of reference points. That means the person's like, I improved today. You know, I improved, I updated. But then the person's like, okay, in comparison to what though? You know, in comparison to the past, I have lived an advanced day by giving this podcast. By just giving this, in this one moment, giving this podcast, I have done something that none of my ancestors had access to, for example. I could look at it from the past and be like, yeah, big achievement, you know, for my genetical lineage. But then, I also perceive that the multidimensional means no absoluteness justifies reality. That means if everything in the moment can't be separated, that means the world is like separated like a cake, and we're comparing each, you know, separate part to the whole thing. But when we realize the whole thing is being one thing, that means the person's like, yo, you know, this is my hand, that's my leg, you know, this is my, you know, back, like so in some sense what I'm saying is like this, all of this is just positioning of different locations on the body, but the body is one body. That means the hand is not separate from the body, the leg is not separate from everything else, everything is connected, right? So when we realize life is alive, just like how, you know, our different parts of the body are being one system, then that opens up an ability where you don't have to carry the weight of any idea, because the world is moving the ideas. You know, that means free will chooses what it picks up. A person in the outer realm chooses what idea to carry, right? And how heavy it is. Or excuse me, I shouldn't say idea. In the outer realms, the person chooses what object they carry, how heavy the object is, right? In the inner realms, a person has to choose in accordance to how humanized they are, and this is how you know the idea is helpful or not. If it honors the human archetype and intelligently there's a communication, you know, or in some sense, if there isn't an honor of the human, it is like an invisible danger is dehumanization. That's internal extinction. But that's not, we shouldn't be too worried about that, because there's too many like decent people living on the planet. It cannot be ignored that we are attention-based creatures. Like, a person can have whatever philosophy, it's the attention that takes the that in some sense activates destiny, you know. And I'll tell you, you know, I have this theory actually that everybody on the planet is fruit, but they're not showing it on a subconscious existential level. Let me tell you why. It's as if you give someone you give a young child a lightsaber, and the child's like, yeah, you know, and then it's as if, imagine you give the child the lightsaber and you tell the child you will never hold this lightsaber again after you play with it. And the child is kind of left like, how do I play with something when it's at the end of the game being lost, right? And the way it is that you use that lightsaber. That's it. That means you carry the weight of the reality that you can handle. Just like how, you know, people have allergies and not everybody can eat the same food. It's similarly, the brain cannot consume the same information. You know, one has to have a patience as if they're seeing themselves from the future. And a person should have the inspiration as if the past is in a hurry. That means this is I would say, a healthy inner universe where all the past archetypes have honorably completed their work, and the person is only left with the present. And so in the present, the person begins their conscious relationship with the future of the realm. That means I respect the yogis in caves, but the species has been in darkness too long. For the first time, rare opportunities it was. And union is just a story away. Do you know that means if all human beings were told a story that all worldviews fit in, like, do you know what I mean? It's literally like, what human being doesn't want to see the ultimate? I believe every person's psychology is their subconscious, calculated, quickest route to the ultimate. And we have to also remember, right? The body is habitual. The body is like a creature. It's like patterns repeating, right? It's like a sine wave. And really, it's as if like the body, the soldier salutes the commanding officer. The mind loves the body as the body loves the mind. Then the mind, the body, the soldier, of the moment, just as for metaphor's sake, I'm saying this, the soldier is waiting for the commanding officer's order. And the commanding officer is waiting for the soul, the general, to give the order. I want to read for the audience something I've never read before, something I wrote in 2015. And sorry guys. Pretty much in 2015 I wrote this book called Memories of Starlight. I'm just going to read a passage for you. It's pretty much kind of like creative writing, a book about creative, written essays. They're not technically essays, they're just kind of poetry messages. Anyways, so Memories of Starlight, and let's say this is the 39th essay. There are many forms of conception. The title is called Anomalies and Gateways. There are many forms of conception present through your conception. Little have known, but the paths end with you to begin anew. These words are written for those who cannot conceal their face. Once they have seen where the starlight in their eyes has journeyed from. Love is always an unknown door, and the wise have entered with the faith of blind fools, to see they were never fooled. For in the gaze of 10,000 suns, you shall confront the self that never had legs or arms. In the essence of your energetic flux, the hairs on your back shall continue with their task until all anomalies have faded into the sentience that shaped itself. Your world is your self-communication. For many writers thought their books were written by them. For once the phoenix ashes himself like flickering candles about to be dropped in the ocean. A fire shall find you, burning all existential insecurities there. For once you have passed the bridge of death, the realms of the deathless will guide you through the brightest staircase of remembrance. Become a patriot of chaos, and in the madness that showed itself the truth, all gateways will find you. The next passage, these aren't in chronological order. It's called Tears from Beyond the Apocalypse. Can the mind find sanctuary in self? I'll read it again. Can mind find sanctuary in self? Is love a door to itself? For the greatest doorway was the moment where conception began to dance. Could the darkness behind closed eyes belong to no one? That means there's a space between. Through initiative, efficient. Oh my God, what did I write here? Through initiative, efficiency begins to work with us more efficiently. You are more than a man when you belong to the world. Could the heart of hardship beat itself? Your memory is the grace of the self-aware. For you hold a hose to water the cosmos with your breath. Never get caught behind the bars of man's language. For greater treasures are to be revealed through an open heart. Growth is the ability of existence to appreciate its own movement. The road is paved by compassionate hands. Never take from life what you already have. That means if you are the absolute, in regards to the attributeless witness of all attributes in the moment. You know, it's hilarious. It's like our ancestors promised, all of us a better future, but they never said that we have to build it. And last essay from Memories of Starlight, called Cherish the Spark of the Beacon. When fortitude leads to an eclipse, refining the vision of the glowing eyes of man, could the shapeless find the truth in shape? Perhaps you have sat in certain ideas for too long, for intelligence never needs to wait to begin. Your trust in life will carry you to any destination. However, it is you who has forgotten the path to the placeless. Do not push away the imagery that has given shape to your curious eyes. The path to the hidden comes from a new view of that which you consider unhidden. Love is a major duty for the minority to compel through. Some sentences will seem shaky, but in the end of ends, the beginning shall shake you. You may feel like a madman in the playground of chaos, but the light sparks as much as the darkness does. Experience does not require to be differentiated. But it is your conception that blinds you to imagery when you are present beyond any idea. All the voices that you hear are from you. If you were a mountain, would the peak reintroduce you? As the hands of novelty are found, you are the inspiration that carries the moment, that receives all paths. You are undisturbed. Do not distract yourself with an illusion that could never be found. Kiss the fingers that point to your heart. For in the roots of existence, your heart is the beauty of the fruitful. Your home was never here when you have playfully walked through non-existence's door. Within you, the key is your whole. Breathe through the silence that holds your world. And I'll read one more, guys. It's called Son of Many Sons. Do not let your kinships confuse you. You are the child of a very gracious embrace. That which keeps you here also keeps eternity. The Son of Man dies in his own arms. Could the purpose of the right be wrong? Could the purpose of the wrong be right? Do not seek symbols, for the symbology of man only ever made him distant. Direct experience is your key to any door. If you stood in the land of the new, would you let the unborn dance with eternity? Some of our greatest steps have come without feet. There is a part of you that seeks to surrender itself, but another man's voice lingers in your head. Who could be this man? Ask yourself. The more minds, conscious minds on earth, begin caring to tackle the giant questions of humanity. That means imagine one day you woke up and giants are just attacking civilization. But these are giant problems like world hunger, like clean water, like extinction, suffering in the shadows of civilization. Like these are all crucial things to be taken care of. It's as if the moment we accept advanced civilization, every moment we are an advanced, that like you're in the archetype. The moment the world's archetype changes, the self in that world could be anything, but it becomes the world's archetype. To respect the unknown means to respect the unknown dimensions of one's own intelligence. Meditation is like if you were to say a designer would put an object on a table and look at it. You could say when a person meditates, it's as if their intelligence, like a designer, like the whole moment is putting the body like an object on a table, like in complete stillness, and just the mind is being. What tends to happen is there's two types of stillness that needs to be attained in meditation. First stillness is just your physical body being in an undisturbed position. The Buddha recommends sitting cross-legged and the spine being straight. But you can sit or wherever or whatever position you're in, you can go into a meditative state. It's not dependent on just only when you're sitting cross-legged you can meditate. It's not just that. But it is important that if you were an antenna, you keep your spine straight. The next thing about meditation is finding contentment with how you are like a biomechanical breathing engine. That's like the second stillness. The person's like, okay, after I physically stop moving, that means the free will has become the watcher in the meditative state, right? The person's, after the body is still, the body is never actually still because the heart beats, and everything in the body and the circulatory systems are moving like, so the body's never still actually. It's impossible to actually be still. This is why surgeons get paid a lot, But the body can rhythmically become still in the sense that you listen to the sound of your breathing. And for me, I usually, the sound of my breathing reminds me of ocean waves. And once you find contentment with the breath and oxygen, you're inhaling it through your nose. This is very crucial. I would say inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. But this is just to imagine I'm like a tour guide of an interstate and I'm just telling you like this can be done. Now, what happens is that as the person is rhythmically content, that means you're sitting still, and there's nothing else to do. You have no, like for 10 to 20 minutes, you're like, all right, 10 to 20 minutes, I'll put the game of life on pause and just for a moment sit, right? And in that moment, all that is being said is not to meditate or anything or a special technique. It's just to watch your moment, right? And advanced meditators are really good at doing this. And anybody who has understood stillness experientially is really good at observing their inner worlds. So, in that stillness, with the sincerity that I'm just here to watch something, I'm here to observe the event of my mind and body, like my body's chilling, seated like a, like a Buddha in like the lotus position, and the mind is just like, all right, body still, what do? I'm going to still move. So the mind begins showing, and all those people who are like, I can't meditate, I have thoughts, that's the point. You're meant to just watch those thoughts, not to do anything with them, not to have an opinion. Like a museum watch, just your attention's like, honestly, it's like, imagine, like, you know how like there's these sushi stores that have treadmills, but imagine it was an art gallery and people just sat and different artwork like a treadmill, like in the walls of the coffee shop, like endless artwork was just being displayed, Pretty much I'm saying that in that stillness of the body becomes space, in the sense that the body becomes, like, right now, if I tell you, do you feel that, like, an object in front of you? Let's say right now there's a coffee cup in front of me. I don't feel the coffee cup. I feel my biological body, but I don't feel the coffee cup. So in meditation, you attain a stillness of body to some degree, to a point where you can't tell apart if your attention. That means if your eyes weren't open, like, let's say you meditate with your eyes open first. Because when we close our eyes, our inner realms speed up, right? So let's say you've sat down and and let's say we have single pointed concentration, so the person's just watching their moment. They're like, I'm gonna meditate on my whole moment of existence right now, So in that singularity of attention, the body has nothing to do, so the human idea for a second is put on pause, right? The mind displays as if the mind is trying to get the body to move, but as you remain, it's a time thing. Like if you go from 10 to 20 minutes of stillness, you'll notice how your inner realms change, and then something strange happens. Just like how the ripples of a pond settle, the moment you're still and silent and have no opinion on anything and are just being the moment, the body heals and everything heals. All the dimensions, all the ripples in the pond settle. And then you have, in a very hilarious way, a sort of crystallized observance throughout the day. Because the past is endlessly trying to occupy the attention that is needed for the future. Like, this can't be forgotten, right? This is why in these talks of mine, I start from talking, when I explain something, I start sometimes from talking about its past, how it is in the present, then what's its future going to be, Humanity doesn't have to be alone, because we have become conscious minds and we are engaging in name and form. It's as if Tony Stark is already in the Iron Man suit of the ego. The Atman in Vedic thought is already in samsara as an ego. So it's as if Tony Stark has worn the Iron Man suit, then might as well do something with the Iron Man suit you've worn until you can take it off, or the, nature reaches its proper evolutionary, point. Yeah. And of course, there's so many ideas that are going to come in the future where I have no clue, like, if human beings can handle it, right? Like, to me personally, I can treat AI like a human being, but I think out of the whole population on the planet, we did a survey, very few people who will be compassionate to artificial intelligence, For example, that would be a sort of dehumanized entrance of animate behavior in the domain of human psychology, right? Or let's say in the future, extraterrestrials land. Extraterrestrials are like, yo, human beings can talk now and they can acknowledge the universe. All right, let's go talk to them. Do you know what I mean? Can you imagine a bunch of extraterrestrial, students from, imagine in the Andromeda Galaxy, there's a university there, and students from the Andromeda Galaxy are like, yo guys, let's, on our lunch break, go see human beings on Earth or something. the human being, the story of the human being is becoming more and more non-local. Eventually, its ultimate tangible non-locality is the concept of infinity. Secular society, its divinity is infinity. I would say non-secular societies, their divinity is not infinity, it is the ultimate. The ultimate could be beyond the infinite. You know, nobody can be judged because until the end of time, from different moments of the space-time continuum, we can judge something, you know. That means you can endlessly find good reasons and bad reasons for something that you look at a lot, you know. And so the mind is going to act out its games, all the urges. Let's say you're someone, in the morning somebody pushed you and you were civilized and you didn't push back, but that urge to push something is in you, right? And let's say you go home and you just slam your front door open as if you pushed the person, but it was like your front door you opened like that, you know? I'm just saying that life is not only a multidimensional event, not only some of the information in the event is from us, some of it is from something outside of us, not only that thing that is like intelligence that is outside of our personalized experience is unknown, that unknown in some sense can be conscious or unconscious, right? That means imagine extraterrestrials landed in the future. And they were like pretty cool and enlightened extraterrestrials, okay? And how we knew they were cool is because they were being very honest, you know, and they were very kind. And so let's say these kind extraterrestrials, advanced extraterrestrials have arrived in the future, and we human beings, we're like, we have so many questions, and the extraterrestrials telepathically are like, sure, we'll answer as many. Do you know? You know, we're immortal, energetic extraterrestrials, we don't mind. You know? You know? And so imagine somebody goes up to that extraterrestrial and it's like, hey man, thanks for answering all of our questions, but I have a question. What is your greatest question? And then we'll see if the extraterrestrial, in some sense, acknowledges the unknown, or they feel the authority of the universe, right? Because any sort of domination mindset, whether it's in the microcosm or macrocosm, it's just unnecessary, right? There's a gentler way where the world can happen. And even the Buddha, I should probably share this story. The Buddha remembers one of his past lives where he was in hell. And it was him and this other person. And in hell, there was this kind of hellish guard. And this hellish guard would every day force them to do something. You know? And they had to endlessly do it. And the guard would brutally, like, hit them and all this. And it was kind of like, you can, you know, hellish imagery. And so what happens is that one day Buddha turns around to this guard and says, hey man, why are you hitting us? We're already doing what we're doing here in this like hell, you know, hell simulation. And so that moment, this is Buddha, this is an actual story of Buddha. So Buddha, in that past life, the moment he says that to the guard in hell, the guard in hell has this kind of spear or something, there's a specific word for it, and he, in some sense, a trident, I think, and he kills Buddha instantly. And the moment Buddha dies, he incarnates as a human being his next lifetime, and then he becomes Buddha and remembers all of it, right? And the whole point of it was that the moment he noticed a greater dimensional possibility, that was the moment where the truth of the reality, even the illusion, was like, all right, this person's, you know, understood, you know, you're free. You know, it's as if the world frees you from how you have kept the world unfree in your inner lives, to be honest. That's the end result of karma, you know. It's as if the person goes to the yogi, hey man, I'm busy, I gotta go to work, how do I get rid of my existential karma? And the yogi's like... And the yogi says, find the smile of the universe, and all your karma will vanish. And the smile of the universe is a collective experience, you know. It's like whoever you are, you just look at the world and you're like, nature is here, existence is here, energy is here. Energy changes from form to form. These are the forms that energy has changed to. The present is like an infinite, magnificent artwork where it's as if anybody who wants to review it will have endless information. Beyond geometrical ignorance in culture, we will go to a state where all logic points to the advanced. And if I could leave the audience with one approach to the world, I would be like, go as far as you can to see how far the human species can perceive. That means if you're an explorer in the outer realms, be brave and go explore. And if you're an explorer in the inner realms, be brave and go explore. That means both the dimensions of mind and body, it's like a giant unknown forest, and everything, every book, every concept in human civilization right now is literally like our camp, you know, in a forest, right? And so we may think we're not hunter-gatherers like the tribes back in the day, but I'm telling you, we totally are, but it's on a macrocosmic level. And guys, before I end, I'll read one last poem. It's called Temple of the Mystic. There are many openings to existential understanding for man, and all of them require self-confrontation. For we are always present through greater vision. As you discover many of your access points, conceiving many realities of unique design, the lines are connected once you are. Bells will begin to sound like distant memories calling you for a walk into the abyss of chaotic knowledge. Such a chaos is present through the mystic's eyes. For the mystic always belonged to the light that entered his eyes. Information shall remember its beautiful roots, for man is as empty as his own conceptions. Soon a wind will blow across the cosmos to remind you of your omniscient face that threw itself out into the gesture of form. The sun shines, for the shining has always been within you. For once you have dissolved into the love of self-awareness, the mystic's temple was always himself. That means it's as if somebody's, you know, in this world saying, hey, you know, anybody who's been in a temple or goes to a temple, your existence is a temple that your soul is in. To revere all that your eyes see, that means it's like how you hold the world, right? That means we endlessly encourage the young generations to be like, think great, kids, you know, go big, go big or go home kind of mentality, right? Or there's this story of this shoemaker who asks his son and says, son, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the son says, Dad, I want to be a shoemaker like you. And the father starts crying, you know, and the son's like, Dad, why are you crying? And he says, son, I wanted to be a king. I ended up as a shoemaker. You know, if you want to be a shoemaker, you're going to end up as nothing, you know? So we're encouraging the future generations to attempt the great. However, the eyes of the species are changing through weather. That means we should treat every moment on the surface of the planet not just having like a climate, a sort of weather, but there is also ideological climate and ideological weather. Can you imagine like Google Maps showing to you the states of the space, the minds, the type of minds that are in a region, you know? there's something about information that is both fascinating and scary. You know, information is our containment as human beings. If it's disturbed too much, we stop being ourselves. You know, this is something where I was seeing the celebrities in Hollywood, and there was this video on YouTube showing how many of them have, like, you know, turbulent inner realms. And for a moment, and it's because of, like, let's say paparazzi or something like that. And for a moment, I'm like, how insane is it, you know, that once we stop treating people like a human being, it doesn't matter if they are a king or a beggar. There will be turbulence. We all have to be human, but not have to in the sense we are human, but we have to consciously live as the human. In order to live consciously as the human being, we have to be at peace with the world where the human being has opened its eyes in. That means it's like, what is a street smart existential existential thing someone can do the moment they open their eyes in a world? Immediately wonder if the world is an ally or is the world an opponent, right? And to me personally, like when I give these talks or whatever I do in this life, I have perceived my allegiance with nature, right? That means it's as if, imagine someone having a conversation with, or having an experience of the simple states that nature provides. That means sitting in a park and just being there with the whole world, as if, like, you know, the person's like, finally, I found an ecosystem I belong, you know? I personally have carried a lot of ideas alone in my inner realms without kind of sharing them. I mean, and then I kind of, like, you know, in 2014, my mind was like, enough! You know? Like, I'll be honest, there's something about absence that is a great teacher. The absence of reality. The absence of truth. As if the only truth is left to be found. It's as if, let's say, everybody listened to militant atheism, everybody on the planet, and we were like, there's nothing else aside from what we touch and see, and beyond the five senses. Anybody who believes anything else, get out of civilization. Imagine militant atheism has this attitude. Now, what happens if everybody treats objects is we're gonna get bored. And when the species gets bored, the mind animates dimensions and levels for itself. So there is no way to ignore multidimensionality just by cultural explanation. Dear listeners, we are an unknown intelligence. We are an unknown life moving in the form, in the known form. We have to wonder about how does this known form perceive the known world and the unknown world, and then we have to retaliate, right? There's a scene in this show called Shingeki no Kyojin. Incredible literary work to me. I feel it's one of the greatest stories ever told. And in this story, there is a character, there is a a commander called Commander Erevin. And then there's his elite, captain called Levi. These are two important characters in the show. And there's a scene where the commander says, we're all about to die, and the best thing that the troops can do, they're in this kind of like extinction scenario where giants, these unknown giants, are attacking them. And so what happens is Commander Erwin says, I gotta lead all these, and all the veteran soldiers have died, by the way, at this point in the show, in this scene. And so Commander Erwin says his heart is kind of broken, where a part of him wants to like escape and go see this secret kind of room where there's a truth about the world in it. Literally, that's part of the story. And then his other heart is like, what do we do about all the human beings who have lived so far, right? So he decides to use himself and all the soldiers who were inevitably going to die as a distraction, and they all march toward the giant problem in front of them. Do you know? And so there's that, and what I'm trying to say is like that scene that really calls to me is like that moment where the Commander Erwin looks at Levi and he thanks him as if he has given his final command, you know, and then he runs in the show and dies on battlefield, but somehow they manage to be semi-victorious, but the bad guy gets away. It's a long story, but an incredible show. But that moment where the commander accepted his fate, accepted the movement of reality, and thanked the future and how it would walk after its acknowledgement of what was here. I am telling you, the future is where honor lives. And the reason human beings don't have honor is because we have stopped caring for the ethos of our grandchildren, great-great-great-grandchildren. As if nobody's asking, what story of life are they gonna tell themselves, And their story of life is probably going to be like, oh my God, what did our ancestors do before we were born? Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. One last thing about the subtitle. How are you moving in your inner realms? This is an incredible question. I personally feel like I might dedicate an episode just to this title. How are you moving in your inner realms? Everybody's inner realms, their movement is going to be different. So it's as if you are just like handwriting. You are like, I don't want to say mind writing, but it's kind of like the person is training themselves through the observation of how their intelligence expresses in different personal dimensions and impersonal dimensions. An advanced civilization awaits. We just have to pull the curtains of the past to see the true future that the present deserves. Thanks for listening, guys. Much blessings and namaste. Oh, and actually, if there's questions, people can ask, actually. I don't know if I think I answered, okay, there's no questions, yeah. If I was to actually question this episode, I would say the biggest thing is like, if the mind is not an object, and if objects have weight and subjects don't, what is the type of weight I'm talking about? I'm talking about how the weight of how an idea occupies your attention. When life moves, that attention requires to be clear in a sense of accessing like various different ideas, We are honestly an antenna. Anyone who understands that they're an antenna, I'm telling you, the logos, I wrote it down, this was years ago. The logos kind of through my own, through the involuntary movement of the pen, told me that every person has a library behind their eyes, a hidden library, and it is up to them to choose if they care enough to share it with the world. Every person is a unique antenna. And believe it or not, right now we're thinking of like in the domain of literature, even that needs to evolve, where there's this idea of like every person on the planet should be writing a book, and those books should be circulating all over the planet, as if information is entering the veins of civilization. Information from the inner realms, not just information from the outer realms. It's as if an extraterrestrial in the future lands and says, hey, human beings, what have you been doing? You know, what has your species been doing this whole time? You know, and it'd be so embarrassing if we're like, we don't know. So we have to, in some sense, prepare for future embarrassment in front of extraterrestrial contact. And I'm saying this, of course, hypothetically, but it's a humorous idea. We would say probably that we are an infinite story. We have been living inside an infinite story, and that's how human beings have been living. That means the study of language is the most important thing to study. Language is keeping the world behind your eyes. You know, it's the geometry of it. We have literally interlinked a sound, an inner realm symbol, an inner realm image, with an outer realm existential image, right? So an internally experiential inner realm subjective image, and an existentially external objective image, right? And we link these with a sound. So when I say apple, everybody can perceive an apple in their inner realms, right? If I say, like, imagine, like, you know, Yoda kind of crushing a Ferrari with the power of the Force. Imagine Yoda, you know, opens his, you know, stands on his porch and sees there's a Ferrari blocking his driveway. He uses the Force to crumble the Ferrari. You know? Oh man. Evolution deserves our greatest performance, you know, and all celebrations should give cheers to them. Thanks, guys. Blessings. No.